Committee stage at third reading. I endorse the bill and ask the House to support it further.
Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak for this bill. New Zealand First is pleased to have the opportunity to make our first input into this important bill. But we would strongly urge the House to re-examine several aspects of this bill with a view to amending certain of its provisions in order to bring the bill into line both with its stated intentions and with the Principal Act, with the intent of the Principal Act. New Zealand First is a firm advocate of the rights of responsible law-abiding firearms users, and we support any moves which will increase and improve the level of safety surrounding the availability and use of firearms in society, without unnecessarily impinging on the rights of those law-abiding users. We would like to support this bill, but we cannot in all good conscience do so while it remains in its present form. There are certain aspects of the bill's construction which we intend to address by way of supplementary order paper. We are concerned, as are many correspondents from within the law-abiding firearms community, about the potential for any semi-automatic firearm to be declared an MSSA under the regulatory provisions of the Act, and we have doubts that the requirement for a separate Act of Parliament to validate any such regulation provides a sufficient safeguard against any such declaration being made, counter to the intent of the Primary Act, that being the Arms Act 1983. Mr Speaker, New Zealand First contends that the intent of the Primary Act was very clear in its desire to draw a distinction between those firearms which were obviously of military style and those which are of obviously sporting configuration. To that end, we would prefer to see an additional clause inserted further to the provisions of Clause 74A, to the effect and with the intention of ensuring that no regulation shall be made with respect to the definition of a military-style semi-automatic firearm if that definition is contrary to the intent of the Principal Act. We are also concerned, as are many lawful firearms users, about the issue of pistol grips. We note from a reading of the background material for the bill that many submitters to the Select Committee contended that even a fully freestanding military pattern pistol grip was not of material importance in terms of the potential danger to public safety purported to be posed by semi-automatic firearms. It is our belief and concern that the bill in fact makes the definition of a pistol grip less clear and concise than is the case in the existing legislation, rather than more so. We are concerned that the regulatory provisions of the bill with regards to pistol grips may indicate a desire in certain quarters to restrict access by the law-abiding firearms community to semi-automatics generally, on what we would describe as the contestable grounds that firearms which resemble those of a military pattern are somehow inherently more dangerous than those which do not, or which have a more commonly recognised sporting configuration. It is our opinion that any such actual potential danger from semi-automatic firearms was addressed by the restrictions on magazine capacity for both rimfire and centrefire firearms in the 1992 regulations. We are bound to accept at face value the bill's contention that regulatory authorities must have the flexibility to respond to changes in manufacturing design, but it remains our belief that thumbholes and Dragunov stocks do not of themselves contain any real or potential threat to public safety. It is true that pistol grips allow for a better hold and for more accurate placement of shots, and it was for this reason that the manufacturers of military arms adopted this design feature from early sporting and hunting rifles, whose use of the pistol grip predates its inclusion in military long guns. But it does not follow, in our estimation, that the availability of a pistol grip, even a fully freestanding one, of the pattern commonly regarded as being military style, with regards to a semi-automatic rifle, provides for any greater inherent or potential danger to public safety. The inclusion of a fully freestanding pistol grip may allow an assault rifle to be fired with one hand or from the hip, but this is only of advantage if the weapon is capable of fully automatic fire, and all such firearms have long since been banned from civilian use in New Zealand. In addition to which, genuine assault rifles, which include a fully automatic function, those capable of what is more commonly known as machine gun fire, for the benefit of members who may not be familiar with the difference, are in this modern day generally of short carbine construction and are not available, and even their civilianised semi-automatic counterparts are not available to civilian holders of A and E category firearms licences, because the weapons themselves are physically too short to be owned on anything other than a licence which has a pistol endorsement. The length and weight of a long gun as it is defined in New Zealand law would preclude its accurate one-handed operation in any practical application, even with the freestanding pistol grip, and there is no advantage, Mr Speaker, that I can see in firing any such weapon from the hip, given that the accurate placement of shots from this firing position is dependent on the visual tracing of rounds fired in very rapid succession at a rate far in excess of the rate of fire which is possible to obtain with a semi-automatic firearm, which requires a separate pull of the trigger to facilitate the discharge of each subsequent round. Again, New Zealand First believes that even if a person were capable of rapid trigger pulling at superhuman speed, the 1992 restrictions on magazine capacity would negate any advantage that this unlikely ability may provide. In addition to this, it is the reality that the issue to the degree in which the pistol grip or thumb hole may be said to be incorporated into the stock of the firearm in question. And it is this issue which was at the heart of the case of Lincoln and the New Zealand Police. The firearm at the centre of the case in question was a Heckler & Koch SM8, which has a thumb hole stock. The stock in question quite clearly does not incorporate a freestanding pistol grip, as the learned judge correctly determined. And the police's contention that it did forms the basis for the suspicion widely held in the firearms community that some in the police headquarters have a not very well hidden agenda to restrict or deny access to semi-automatic firearms to law-abiding firearms licence holder generally. One of the other firearms held up as an exhibit in the case was an AK-47 copy, which had a connecting rod fitted between the base of the pistol grip and the butt of the stock, in what is equally clearly a blatant and, I must say, rather crude attempt to circumvent the letter of the law, and which I believe most reasonable firearms users would also agree breaches the spirit of the law. That spirit needs to be observed both ways, Mr. Speaker, and if the police genuinely desire to uphold that spirit, they should have no objection to the inclusion of the amendment to the proposed clause 74A, as I've suggested. I would contend that the Principal Act makes it very clear indeed what does and what does not constitute a freestanding military pattern pistol grip. It is not for the police to seek to rewrite legislation as it is passed by this House, Mr. Speaker. That is not the way democracy works in this country. I would also add that even in the case of the AK-47 copy, with the rod between the base of the grip and the butt of the stock, as with the thumb hole or Dragunov stock, the presence of any physical barrier which impinges on the forearm of the user prevents the pistol grip from being held effectively in a one-handed fashion, because the hand is not able to be held directly behind the grip. This is a false concern, Mr. Speaker. New Zealand First is also not satisfied that the bill will sufficiently restrict access to powerful or realistic replica airguns by those purchasers who may have criminal intent. It is our belief that any airgun capable of generating a muzzle energy beyond a prescribed limit should only be available to firearms licence holders. At present, only pre-charged pneumatic airguns are subject to this restriction. It is of concern to New Zealand First that these replica firearms and powerful airguns are all too often sought after by people who would not be granted firearms licences were they to apply for them, on the grounds that their reasons for wanting to own firearms would not be proper or sufficient. We do not believe that people who would ordinarily be denied real firearms should be able to obtain the next best thing either. We note a concern widely held throughout the firearms community that the bill focuses on extra restrictions on New Zealand's 230,000 licensed firearms owners, yet fails to implement a single regulation that will punish the misuse of firearms by the criminal fraternity. We agree with these sentiments entirely. Finally, Mr. Speaker, and of great importance to this House and to the validity of this bill, is that the fact that it contains a basic error, which, if left uncorrected, will exclude a large number of .22 rifles from its ambit. Part 1, Clause 4, subsection A2 and A3 define a calibre of .22 inches or less. Mr. Speaker, the word calibre is somewhat interchangeable in terms of firearms terminology. The actual diameter or calibre of a .22 bullet is .224 of an inch, which is obviously larger than the definition given. If this error is not corrected, no semi-automatic .22 rifle in New Zealand will be covered by it. I own 3 such rifles myself, and under this bill as it stands, there will be nothing stopping me from going online and buying 30-round banana mags or 50-round box mags, or indeed fitting them for belt feed if I so desire, in true Rambo fashion. We would like to support this bill, and we give notice to this House that we will be introducing a supplementary order paper in order to address the areas of concern we've highlighted, and we would urge the House to support this SOP in order that we may reconsider giving our support to this bill. Thank you.
I call Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I learnt more about guns in the last 5 minutes than I knew in my lifetime. I'm not sure whether it's right or wrong, and I'm totally confused by